Classifying angles, U7.C7.L1. Take it away, Mrs. Benoit.
Hi, welcome back. You must be so thrilled to see and hear us. We are in the final units of the year, and we are hitting a geometry unit. And this one is starting out with angles and classifying them. Hopefully by the end, you will be able to hit these two targets. I can name and classify angles, and I can find the measures of missing angles. These two problems that you see here will be the two problems we'll come back to at the end and ask you to solve. One is naming the angle below and classifying it, and then the other is finding the missing measure. We'll come back to this at the end, so you don't have to pause and write it down now. This next part of the board is a lot of definitions. You need to make sure you get these down in your notes. First are two kinds of angles that we can have. Vertical angles, those are opposite angles formed by two intersecting lines. So you have two intersecting lines like the ones that I've drawn up here. And I have my angles named with just numbers, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Vertical angles are across from each other, and they are always congruent. And what does congruent mean? Congruent is a fancy math term for equal, so vertical angles are equal. So in this picture here, angles 4 and 2 are vertical, and they're congruent, and we'll mark them with the same arc to show that they are the same measure. 1 and 3 are also vertical and congruent. I'm going to use 2 arcs there on 1 and 3 to show they are vertical and congruent. So the opposite ones have the same marking, the same arc. We also have adjacent angles. Those angles are next to each other. They share a common side and a common vertex. And a vertex is the point which the angle originates, okay? So in this picture here, it's the same picture as the one that we had above. But this time we're looking for adjacent angles, angles that are next to each other. So angles 1 and 2 would be adjacent to each other. They are next to each other. Angle 1 would also be adjacent to angle 4 because it's next to angle 4. And then angles 3 and 4 would be adjacent. You could just kind of go around the picture. The ones that are next to have a common side and a common vertex are your adjacent angles. And then hopefully this part will be review for you down here. We have 4 other angles we're going to talk about in this unit. We have straight angles. Straight angles are your straight line. And a straight line is how many degrees? 180. So your straight angle equals 180 degrees. Then you can have acute angles. Those are small. They're cute to help you remember. Cute little angles, a cute little angle, okay? And those are under 90 degrees. Then we have the opposite of acute, obtuse. Those kind of look like they're leaning back a little bit. Those are larger or over 90 degrees. And we're using 90 degrees as our base here. Acute are smaller, obtuse are larger. 90 degrees are a right angle. You'll see it in a picture like this, okay, with the little box formed. That's a right angle or 90 degrees. We're going to need all of this vocabulary to help us throughout this unit. So make sure you put this in a safe place and have it with you whenever referring to these videos. Okay, let's classify and name. So you're going to see angles set up like these two here. Let's start with the one at the left. There are letters on the side, or there can be numbers near the angle, near its vertex. Okay, so there are 4 ways that we can name these angles. We can use the letters or the number. When using the letters, you'll start at one under the other. The one that's at the vertex is your middle one. Okay, so that should always be in the middle of the name. So for example, this is a right angle. We know that because of the box there. And this right angle could be called angle ABC. B's in the middle there. We could go the other way and call it angle CBA. We could also just call it angle B. That's the point that's at the vertex. That's a letter that's at your vertex, so that can name that angle. And then we've also put a number in here, a 1, so this could also be called angle 1 as well, okay? And to classify it, The classifying part comes from our vocabulary from before. Would we call this straight, right, obtuse, or acute? The little box means it's a 90-degree angle, so we would call this a right angle. So this is classifying, and this is naming. 4 different names, 1 word to classify. This one here, QRS, we're going to start that way. R is in the middle where our vertex is, so that's going to be the letter that's in the middle with the 3 letters. So QRS, or you could go reverse and do angle SRQ, or you could just take the middle letter that's at the vertex and call it angle R, and the number that we have there also helps name it angle 2. Okay, so there's your 4 names. R is in the middle. And then look at the angle. What would it fit from our previous page where we put the definitions? Is it straight, right, acute, or obtuse? If you guessed obtuse, you were right. It is larger than 90 degrees. We don't know how large, but remember it has that like leaning back kind of look to it. Okay? That's classifying and naming. Now here's an example of finding the missing measures. We're going to use our definition for vertical angles. And what do we know about vertical angles? Vertical angles are across from each other and they're always congruent. So this is telling us here that the 2 angles labeled 3y minus 10 degrees and 50 degrees are vertical angles. So we know they're equal. Find the value of y. Well, since we know that they're equal, we can put that equal sign between them and set up an equation to solve. So this is going back to our equations unit. In our equations work, we're going to have that as part of our geometry unit. Write your equation outside of the picture, draw your wall. First step to isolating the variable, move the constant. So we're going to add 10 to both sides. These cancel and we're left with 3y equals 60. Divide both sides by 3 to get the variable by itself. 60 divided by 3 is 20. So the value of y is 20. Now we can check that by putting it back in for this angle here. If we put 20 in place of y, 3 times 20 is 60. 60 minus 10, didn't need that there, is 50. And we said these are vertical angles, so they should equal each other, which they do. So you can check yourself to make sure that you've solved the algebraic portion correctly. Okay, that's finding the missing angles. We talked about classifying and naming. So now we're going to ask you to try these 2 here. We have a name the angle below and classify it. Remember, classifying is straight, obtuse, right, or acute. We have an angle drawn here with the letters J, K, and L. So name it for 3 ways and classify it. And then in this one on the right, we're asking you to find the value of x, and we've given you 2 measurements, 50 degrees and 2x plus 2 degrees. And I didn't write it here, but these are vertical angles. Good luck.